Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell. Not here. Councilmember Garitano. Here. Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie. Here. Councilmember McCutcheon. Here. We're good to go.
Okay, we have 5 people present, so that constitutes a quorum. So we will go ahead and proceed. First item of business will be approval of the minutes from the May 24th meeting. Any discussion on the minutes prior to approval? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councilmember McCutcheon. Second. Councilmember Brost. All in favor of approval of the minutes from the May 24th meeting, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstaining? Minutes approved. Thank you very much. Prior to public comments, I'm going to exercise Chair's prerogative and ask City Administrator Cross to go ahead and introduce our Economic Development Communications Manager, Mr. Thomas Lee, who joined us a couple of months ago, just due to some things that came up since he joined us. Several of you may not have had a chance to get to know him yet. So that being the case, I will turn it over to City Administrator to introduce our new Economic Development Communications Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it gives me great pleasure to finally introduce our new Economic Development / Communications Manager, Mr. Thomas Lee. As Mr. Chair Garitano or Ottenberg just mentioned, Tom has been with us for about 2 months. Had a little rough start at the beginning. Ended up contracting COVID the day before he was expected to start with the city. And so he took a little time off to recuperate from that, but came back strong. You all have had the benefit of seeing some of his work already, that he's done a great job reaching out to our businesses. Some of them, he has quite a few yet to go. I've challenged him to reach out to, we have almost 300 businesses in Wildwood, and my expectation is that he will have a conversation with each one of those within his first 12 months, hopefully sooner. But he has done quite a bit of work on, and looking at some statistics regarding occupancy. So I think that is just a taste of things that will come from Mr. Lee. Excited to have him. So I'm going to let him kind of give you a little bit of his background. We'll keep it brief, and we can kind of tell you where he came from. And I think he's a great addition to the team, the administration department. I think he'll be able to help Travis in some regards. Ultimately, Tom will be handling some of those as part of his duties as the communications manager, so that Travis can go and do some of his stuff that he can't do as our senior planner. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Lee to give us a little history on his background.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction there, City Administrator Cross. Just wanted to introduce myself. I am Thomas Lee. I did join about a couple months ago. And before I took this position, I was working as a digital marketing executive in the PR wing for the government relations arm of a company called Division D. I worked with a lot of different cities across the United States to work on their different prerogatives, to reach out to either businesses or their residents, to give them public information and keep them up to date on anything that was important to relay. On top of that, I did manage a team there, and I think I can definitely take some of those skills that I learned in the digital marketing realm and developing that those economic relations that I had there and carry them over to the city.
All right, thank you very much. I know I speak for all of us when we say welcome, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, let's move along to public comments. I see no one in the audience, so it doesn't look like there's any public comments there. Travis, any one lined up online?
Mr. Chair, there are none in attendance via Zoom.
Okay, so that takes care of public comments. Thank you. Let's move then to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion items. So what I did was, in conversation with, Mr. Lee is, we took a look at the agenda that we had put together last time. We changed the order of a couple of the items a little bit, just because we thought it might add to a better flow for discussions during the meeting. And so what we're going to do is get an update on business changes and other business news here prior to going into, discussions on where this committee may want to, move going forward in terms of some of our activities. So with that, Mr. Lee, I'll turn things back over to you to provide us with a business update on changes and other business news.
Yeah. So to get down to the business here, I will kind of go over some high level stuff, but there is a little bit more additional detail on some things within the documents presented within the agenda. But just to give some updates on the openings within the city of Wildwood since our recess back in May, we do have Fox Company Yoga coming in at 16745 Main Street. It will be most likely coming in within about 4 months. They have been doing the bidding and they've chosen an architect to kind of come in and get their work done. But at this time, they are looking to open sometime in 4 months. On top of that, the exercise coach has moved in as well over at 101 Plaza Drive, along with Silver Spoon Ice Cream Co. over at 17225 New College Avenue. They actually took over, and this kind of feeds into one of our closings. They took over the lease of Empire Nutrition, which served, different kind of nutritional drinks. They unfortunately were not able to, maintain that business, but Silver Spoon was able to take over the lease. A couple more here. Tresses by Jess, which is a hair salon, will be opening here soon at 16451 Village Plaza View Drive. They are currently working on a couple things to get their business license approved and a couple signage issues, but they should be going within some time in early or late September. I know that lastly, the last opening we have here is Elegant Design Day Spa, otherwise known as Elegant Day Spa, over at 16576 Manchester. They are looking to open sometime between September 15th and October 1st. They actually came from Ellisville, Candy is the owner of the Elegant Day Spa, and she is a very nice woman, and she's looking to open as soon as possible. She is just working on a couple of logistic issues to make sure they're ready to go. Now, kind of shifting focus over to our closures since our last meeting, we have Yen Ching over at 16584 Manchester Road. Unfortunately, they have closed, and Mr. Ching had decided to retire, actually. So kind of a shift in his prerogatives there. On top of that, we also had, like I said before, Empire Nutrition at 17225 New College Ave has closed as well. They do still have a location over in Eureka, but they just didn't think it was tenable to keep 2 locations open. Lastly, here, we're going to kind of shift over to, kind of movements, the top level things here. Clinical Biosafety Services at 16759 Main Street, Suite 208 is moving from our location here in Wildwood over to Chesterfield. That will be considered vacant on November 1st, 2022. Also within that Main Street corridor, we have Architect Now and Wildwood Workspaces and Suite 200 and Suite 205. They are actually looking to sublease their location. So at this point, they are considered available. They are doing that through Intellica Commercial Real Estate. So we'll be keeping everyone posted on that. And then lastly, another big one here, Access Worldwide Supply Chain Logistics. I talked with David Margiata, who's the CEO of that company and also owns the building located at 2638 Highway 109. And he's moving his business from Suite 100 over to he's moving to the upstairs where he's having a vacancy coming up. And at this time, he's looking to actually lease out that space. So we will see that opening, and we'll definitely be able to post that on our website to make sure we can get as much publicity to it as possible. And that's all we have for really the business changes, openings and closings. We have a couple ownership changes, but that's really the top level stuff. When it comes to the other news that we have in store, I did want to point out some prior ribbon cutting ceremonies that we've had over the last couple months, and then 2 that are coming up that are pretty important, and I'll give you a good reason why there. So we had Rockwood Eye Care. They had a wonderful ribbon cutting ceremony back on July 7th. They're located at 16972 Manchester. That was hosted with the Chamber of Commerce. Just to give that heads up, it'll mean something in a second here. And then Madiri at 17013 New College Avenue, Suite 101. held its ribbon cutting ceremony on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. Both were really well orchestrated. They were done by the Chamber of Commerce, and this kind of feeds into the next section here, the upcoming ribbon cutting ceremonies. We have Silver Spoon Ice Cream Co. Previously mentioned in the openings that are coming up. They're looking to open on September 15th. And at the end of the day, they are also scheduling their ribbon cutting ceremony with the city instead of the chamber. They have opted out of the Chamber of Commerce. They would not like to join. So us as the city wanted to be able to provide businesses within the community that do not have, either the resources or they just decide they don't want to be a part of the organization. We want to make sure that they're still able to get a ribbon cutting ceremony and a proper welcome to the community. So the city will now be orchestrating that. We do have the proper materials in place at this time, as in the big ribbon cutting scissors and the actual ribbon itself to conduct these. And actually, our scissors are, they're really nice, and I think it'll be a good show of support for our business community. So we'll be doing that on September 23rd, 2022 at 11:30. We invite everyone that would like to, enjoy a little ice cream. I talked to David Starl, the owner, and he'll be having a little ice cream social. So he'll be serving a little ice cream and then inviting anybody that can come, but he's already said he has about 30 people on his list, so it's going to be a pretty big event, and it'll be the day before Celebrate Wildwood, so it'll be a fun time. Secondly, we have the exercise coach, which is going to be the following week. This is also going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony hosted by the city. So we'll be going out there on September 28th at 11:30 a.m. I talked with Jessica, and she is super excited to, have this chance to meet with members of the community, but also meet with city officials that could come in and, kind of show support for her business, her and her husband's business. So on top of that, we'll be obviously reaching out to the businesses surrounding these areas to make sure that we can get as much support as possible. We definitely want to make sure they feel that there is an entrepreneurial spirit here and they have the support from everyone around them. Other couple high level updates, like I said before in the previous changes, there's a couple things that are in here that not necessarily as high, but I did want to point out kind of the highlights here. With Hidden Valley, the director of the planning and parks and I met with Hidden Valley's GM today, Anthony Santora, and he wanted to just give us an update that they have a targeted opening date of December 17th, 2022. And as of right now, I do believe the passes are currently available to be bought, and they will be doing a fall festival kind of event that will allow individuals to come in, meet some of the individuals running the show, and then also get their passes. So that's looking up, and that I did say that date is targeted. We do want to make sure it does open there, but they said that if it's not cold enough on December 17th, they might have to push it back. So we'll keep you updated there. But at the end of the day, they do have a new general manager, Anthony Santora. Seems like an excellent individual, and he's really excited about celebrating their 40th anniversary season. Not just that, they also are having a large event for this anniversary. So the city is working, the department and the city are working to see how we can get involved with that event, make sure that we're present and they have all the resources they need. Another big one here, just wanted to point out that Pasiglia's Nursery and Garden Center is having their first fall festival on September 17th, 2022 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I met with their marketing director, Maureen, and this is the first year that they are actually doing this. And they'll be having, multiple, food trucks coming in. They'll have a ton of vendors, and overall, it seems like it's shaping out to be a pretty cool event the week before Celebrate Wildwood. So we hope we can get some people out there to support them. And then one last thing on the updates, I did just want to mention that the old Jack in the Box was purchased by Gorgian Acquisitions. The property owner did receive a quite hefty bill for the plumbing issues that were currently there. And at this time, they are not looking to, fix those issues. So they are possibly looking to sell that property. So the potential business that was looking to maybe lease that out, that at this time has been postponed. But that concludes the high level remarks from the business changes and updates. More than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Thomas?
I had one, but it went.
Could you repeat the time for the Pasiglia's event?
Of course. So the Pasiglia Nursery and Garden Center Fall Festival, it'll be on September 17th, 2022 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And just as a reminder, they're located at 1855 Highway 109. Once again, that's 1 week, the Saturday before Celebrate Wildwood. So that's just to kind of keep your calendar marked.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to ready for action and actually, I'm sorry.
Could you give us the name of the ice cream store one more time? I didn't
Yeah.
get that written down.
Of course. Thank you, Councilman. Silver Spoon Ice Cream Co. They're actually contracted, interesting enough, to serve Chocolate Ice Cream Co. Ice cream products. This is David Starl is the owner there, and he actually owns one other location up in Wisconsin, but he also owns a restaurant. He's actually opening this location and buying another location, which is not ready to go in Kirkwood. So he's expanding in St. Louis, and he's excited to be a part of Wildwood. Oh, totally fine. So yeah, no, they're located over at 17225 New College Avenue over in Wildwood Square, right next to the community college.
Yeah, I know where that's at. Thank you.
You're
City
welcome.
Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to kind of just fill in a little bit of the thinking behind the ribbon cutting ceremonies. The ribbon cutting ceremonies in the past has been coordinated and conducted without a lot of communication to the city by the West County Chamber of Commerce. And we would find out about them at the last minute, and then we're scrambling to, get the mayor and you all there and so forth. And it was becoming problematic. And like you say, it's our city, it's our businesses, and yet, we're kind of, we were the tail, we weren't the dog, we were getting wagged by the dog. So, and that was exacerbated by the fact that some of our businesses saying, I don't necessarily want to be part of West County Chamber of Commerce. I see no benefit. I mean, it's a personal choice. They charge dues and so forth, and they can choose or not to. But the fact is, West County says, well, you don't charge us, we're not doing a ribbon cutting ceremony for you. We're going, okay, well, that's not real nice. So Tom and I talked, and they said, well, let's get our own ribbon, let's get our own scissors. So Tom's, we actually had a big pair of scissors in the storage room, unbeknownst to us, a big pair of gold, really nice scissors and so forth. And we'll do our own, which we should be doing anyway, quite honestly. I mean, we control our own destiny, and it's our businesses and so forth. So that's a little the thought process behind why we're doing that. If West County Chamber, wants to participate, are the folks that do join them and they want to do it, that's fine. But we were kind of being left out, so didn't really seem right. So just kind of wanted to fill in a little bit there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Under ready for action, you will see listed the B&B Theater Movie Festival proposal. That is actually an error that I didn't catch until about 2 hours ago. If you'll recall, in our May meeting, we actually voted to delay action on this proposal until the September meeting. So we can just skip over that and take it up in the September meeting as we originally decided to do back in May. All right, so moving on here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I believe that you probably should have a motion made and seconded to table that until the September meeting, sir.
Okay, all right.
We did that back in May.
Yeah.
Well, and
Just to make sure we're following proper parliamentary procedure. So in that case, then I guess I would,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No,
We have an
go ahead.
item on the agenda, and I don't think we can just ignore it without the committee agreeing to table it per the May motion. But since it's on agenda, we just can't just simply skip over it, I don't believe.
And the notice to the states that we're not gonna deal with it until September.
Right.
I think it's appropriate for them.
It's not on the table. We're just simply, you're continuing to table it. I'm uncomfortable with something being on an agenda, a published agenda, without having a formal motion to not deal with it. Because it's a formal item on the agenda. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert in Robert's rules, believe me, but I would feel comfortable if there was just some formal act for this committee to make sure that you're not addressing it in this, other than just a statement. That's my thought.
I'll make a motion that we recognize this item was.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in
Yeah,
favor of the motion?
Wait,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just one,
Oh,
could you
Councilmember
repeat
Brooke.
it? Yeah, it sort of cut out on me. I couldn't hear it.
Okay.
Apologize, but I'll repeat that. So the motion was, sorry, I made a motion to recognize that this was added to the agenda in error and was previously tabled to September.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the motion was seconded. Any discussion? Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to the discussion of the occupancy report. Just to give you a little bit of background to this report that Mr. Lee is going to review for us here in a couple of minutes. Over the past year, I've heard a lot of discussion regarding the occupancy rates of both commercial and retail businesses here in the city. And some people feel that the occupancy rates are much lower than they should be. And I've heard other people say that the occupancy rates are actually pretty good. So Mr. Lee and I had several conversations and decided, well, let's actually do some research and try to find out what the occupancy rates really are. And then we can use that as a starting point for discussions regarding how we go forward. At the same time, let's try to benchmark, if we can, realistically against other municipalities, realizing that that may be an apples to oranges comparison simply because other municipalities don't necessarily have the same, what I will call, strategy for concentrating their businesses in specific areas the way that Wildwood does. So that's the reason we have this report. It's a very extensive report. Mr. Lee spent a lot of time on this report. It was sent out to you previously, but with it being summer and vacations and that sort of thing, some of you may not have had a chance to review it to the extent that you would like. So I've asked him to at least give us kind of a brief overview of the report and let us know where the city is at today regarding occupancy rates. And I use the term occupancy rates rather than vacancy rates because I prefer to take the high road, right? So anyway, Mr. Lee, I'll turn it over to you to provide a review of the report that you put together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to look into this report. I definitely think there are a lot of insights that could be learned from it. I'll just kind of go over, since it is kind of an extensive report, I will just kind of go over a couple key questions and key notes that I noticed and I wanted to make sure to get across. First and foremost, we want to make sure we, go over the current retail and commercial occupancy rates as they are. Also, I wanted to give you a little bit more insight on how these rates were calculated and how I went about doing that. And then also kind of discussing how these rates have kind of changed in the last couple of years and how that was made up. And then on top of that, a comparison to other municipalities and the challenges, like you were saying, Mr. Chair, about it kind of being an apples and oranges in some cases when comparing to Manchester, Baldwin, other cities and municipalities around our city. And lastly, I wanted to point out, how Wildwood business is concentrated in a few specific areas. I think that's going to be kind of a variable to look into and, potentially take into account. But to kind of get into the meat and bones of it, we have currently in Wildwood, and this data is based off of different data sources, but the first source we went to was CoStar, which is one of the leading experts in getting data on different vacancy rates and understanding which properties have brokers managing them and what the square footage is that's available. That's the main key there. And from there, comparatively, to kind of just give you a background on how this stuff was calculated, we first used CoStar to make sure we were able to identify the base benchmark data. But on top of that, we I myself and the department contacted brokers and conducted in-person visits to the major retail office properties within Wildwood to kind of get, a hands-on view and get a better understanding if the data that was provided by CoStar was actually accurate. We did find that in most cases that CoStar was providing accurate data, and we didn't seem to have too many discrepancies there. That being said, once we noticed a vacancy or something that just looked askew, we recorded the square footage of said vacancy, and then we also calculated the total Wildwood Main Plaza square footage vacancy, square footage in general. Once we had those two numbers, we were able to figure out how much vacant space there was comparatively to the amount of total space available. In that case, we were able to identify that in retail right now, over the whole, this isn't looking at the entire city, all properties included, our retail occupancy rate is 88.62%. Our office/commercial occupancy rate is 91.66%. And that total occupancy rate combined with retail and office/commercial would equal 89.22%. We found that is pretty on par with the surrounding municipalities. In this case, there were some cities and municipalities around us that did have slightly higher occupancy rates, and there were also some that had lower. It does seem like it is consistent though with most places around us and with West St. Louis County and St. Louis County as a whole. It's pretty on par. Yes, Councilman. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by the numbers for Chesterfield. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So for the occupancy, are you talking about the vacancy and availability?
The occupancy.
Yeah. So for Chesterfield, it's one of the more interesting ones, and I might dive into a little bit of detail here. In this case, for here, let me just take a look. The retail piece, a main piece that, what occupancy is, it's the inverse of vacancy. So if, there is a 20% vacancy rate, you have an 80% occupancy rate. Availability is a different animal altogether. In this case, what really makes that vacancy rate, the occupancy rate pretty low for Chesterfield is the fact that they have so much vacant space right now currently in that mall that's not being used. They're only utilizing the outside stores. And if you actually look at the report, if you go to the availability versus vacancy distinction graph that we have, you can actually see that it's pretty much the only municipality in here that has actually a higher vacancy rate than their availability rate. And the reason why is because they do not have that space within the mall as available. It's just vacant and no one is taking it up. So at that point, that's why they have such a low occupancy rate at this point. And it's somewhat similar to what we're seeing over in for at least the office side of things in Maryland Heights as well. But that's a different city. Does that answer your question, Councilman McCutcheon? Yeah. Okay. So going forward there, to kind of touch off on some of the changes that could have happened in the last couple of years, I took data that was given from my predecessor, Julian, and was able to collect that data that he had in place from 2016, 2018 and 2020. And then I was able to calculate my own data for 2022. To take a look at this piece, there were certain retail office plazas that were concentrated on. It's the ones that you really kind of notice. They are, whenever you're looking at CoStar, you're looking at, the rates that I provided previously, that is taking in every single property that is, constituted as office or retail within the city of Wildwood. But there is a difference between, just a standard, one man shop and an actual plaza, which, the frequency of visits in the actual daytime and nighttime traffic is what really differentiates these two things. And when we saw that, we actually saw that our occupancy rates were a little bit lower in some of the major retail areas. I did point this out in the shopping center area as well. It didn't really include office locations, but this one did. I did find that, if you look at the chart that was provided for the last couple of years, we did see kind of a gradual increase for both retail and office properties from 2016 to 2020. Obviously, COVID hit during the 2020 year, and we have seen a little bit of a dip since then. I do think that, there are some extraneous circumstances like COVID that, could cause this, but I do see, with the projections provided by CoStar, it actually does seem like we're rebounding a little bit, and there will be more information for that as well coming up. If you have any questions, please let me know on that piece. On top of that, with all this comparison taking place, I wanted to make sure that, we really pointed out, like Chair Ottenberg said, that, this isn't an exact 1-to-1, ratio match. Different cities have different, makeups, they have different population densities. And what I found was there's a couple different, characteristics that I wanted to at least put in everyone's mind as a potential variable coming up whenever thinking about, what we could potentially do to, help curb this issue. On top of that, I have found that, potentially population density within the cities is a variable. The actual amount of retail and office space in general, what we actually have available is one other. The concentration of retail and office businesses in Wildwood comparatively to our neighboring municipalities is another. And then lastly, this one wasn't included in the report, but as I was doing more research and I was looking at different maps about the dispersion, and it's kind of ties into the concentration of retail and office commercial businesses. I found that, the access to the interstate comparatively to the neighboring municipalities was also something that I think we should take into account, because when I look at the map, and I can provide these maps for you that show each parcel of land, I actually could tell you too, for how many parcels office retail there are. It does seem that all of the businesses and all the parcels of land that are being used in the neighboring cities and municipalities, they tend to be right off the highway, or they tend to be on Manchester. And if you know Wildwood, which all of you do, you know that there's kind of pockets of retail / office area. I mean, you have Wildwood Crossing at one end, you have our actual town center, you have the Deerberg Center included in that. And then you'll have a couple dispersed retail office plazas throughout the city, but they're not necessarily concentrated along a row. If you're going through Ellisville, you're going through Baldwin, you literally have lines and lines and lines of businesses lined up. So that was just something I wanted to point out, and I would be happy to provide the committee with an actual Google Maps version of where these parcels are at, so you can visually geospatially understand, hey, this is what it's looking like. But to kind of dive into these differences a little bit more, I did want to point out that the population density is one of the key variables, I think, in this situation. I did provide this within the report, and we actually see that Wildwood has the lowest number of residents per square mile by far. If you look at the map of Wildwood, we are a larger municipality than most municipalities neighboring us, and at the end of the day, we only have around, I believe it was around 533 people per square mile in Wildwood, comparatively to St. Louis County in general at about 2,000 people per square mile. And then if you look at someone like Baldwin, which if you look at the occupancy and the vacancy rates of those of Baldwin and Wildwood comparatively, you'll see Baldwin's doing pretty well, and they're doing a little bit better us in both categories. But they also have over 3,400 different people within each square mile, which I think that if you have more people per square mile, you have more foot traffic, you have more individuals moving around, getting to that house, and you have more opportunity for people to, potentially drive by your store, location, office building, whatever it might be. But I think it's something to take into account. Not necessarily it's the end all be all, but it's definitely a variable I think plays effect here. And then, just in general, it provides easier access. If you have more people, you're going to have easier access to the population for these different retail and office centers, which makes it an attractive place for your businesses to locate. And it also makes it an attractive place if you're a person that likes to do a lot of shopping. You can move right next to a place, hop on Manchester, and get right there. Then I wanted to also jump in. So do you guys have any questions? Any questions on the population density portion here? Okay. Then I actually wanted to jump into the actual space that's there. How much, I know we are talking about rates, but that's just the ratio. When you actually come to it, the amount of space available and vacant, that's how I kind of define this to make it a little bit more easy to see. I actually wrote this in the report, but I kind of wanted to read this verbatim because it does show a pretty good point. So I was comparing Baldwin versus the city of Wildwood and how a closure of a business impacts our ratio at the end of the day, our occupancy ratio. In this case, I referred to it vacancy, but I just wanted to read this aloud here. So when I generally meant when a municipality has less total space, new vacancies are more impactful. You can see them easier. For example, the total amount of Wildwood's retail office space is 600,042, practically 600,042. Baldwin's total retail office space is 5 million, a little bit over 5 million. So if you take a 10,000 square foot area and that becomes vacant, so you get a business closure or you get someone that moves, it affects Wildwood's occupancy rate by 1.6%. And if you take that same 10,000 square footage away from Baldwin, it actually affects it only by 0.02%. So technically, I mean, this is not, an end all be all statement, but there could be more businesses leaving or, entering Baldwin at any given time, and it would have a lessen effect on the actual occupancy rate of Baldwin itself. So when we have if we have a vacancy become available, it makes a greater impact because we have less, items to look at the end of the day. Our residents only have, around 600,000 square feet of different retail and office options. If you're missing, a piece of that, you're going to notice it more if you have, 10 times as much actually, when you get down to the fact it's almost 10 times. So that's just something to take into account and really understand that we really do feel the hit a little bit more if we are losing a business. And it just kind of hammers home the importance of retaining the businesses we do have. It was found that about 86% of the, increased revenue and things like that come from business expansion from your businesses you already have. So it really hammers home the fact that in Wildwood, we really got to take care of our own and really kind of focus on how we can, help our community and help our business community stay focused and stay, revenue driven and get that, revenue keep coming in. Lastly, on that piece, there was two other things I wanted to discuss that could be potential variables here. I wanted to discuss the concentration of retail office business. I kind of touched upon this slightly, but in this case, there is, it's widely dispersed. We don't have that articulated row of businesses like Baldwin, Manchester. Town and Country was the only other municipality that I reviewed in the study that had a similar kind of layout to what we currently have. And Town and Country actually has a pretty similar, I believe, availability rate to the city of Wildwood. So yeah, just wanted to point that piece out. And lastly, the access to the interstates was the big piece that I wanted to point out, because at the end of the day, whenever you have access to an interstate, you have a little bit more of ability to get people that are not necessarily in your municipality itself. If they are, driving back home from work, they might stop off if they see a sign or something like that if they're on the interstate, but you actually have to make a concerted effort to hop on 100 and come down here after you get off Clarkson and Manchester right there. So, I mean, it does have an impact. And I think that at the end of the day, I mean, it's not something we're going to change, but it's something to really consider is how many people are actually coming in. And, if that's the case, if we're not having that as much as we'd like, what kind of tourist activities can we use to make sure that, we can drive that I really look at it as that traction from Manchester and Clarkson. I think that's really the area where people would be able to come in. And if there is a center point where let's get them to come our way instead of the opposite. But yeah, other than that, I just would like to answer any questions you all have. And I thank you for letting me, kind of go over a little bit, but if you read through the report at a later date, I would be more than happy to answer any more detailed questions on some of the specific information provided. Thank you, Chair.
First of all, I want to tell you that was a fantastic report. I sent him an email when I read it over the weekend because I hadn't had a chance to garner all the information. I thought, okay, he says he's coming out with more. I want to see the whole picture first. And so I think that's made it much more malleable for us to have some good discussions about what we need to be doing and what we want to be doing. As you said, while our retail amount isn't as extensive as we see up and down Manchester, there's a reason for that. We chose not to have businesses line up like that in that kind of an arrangement. So we need to be a little bit more creative, I think, as a committee to figure out, okay, what are our goals going to be for additional retail, restaurant, and business. So I look forward to working with you.
I look forward to working with you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question for Tom, but I think it's worth noting because as part of his presentation, he mentioned about businesses that have closed and that sort of thing. And I think I want to make sure that the committee understands that to a business, and I'm not aware of any business that has closed within the city of Wildwood that it wasn't as a result of retirement or someone saying, you know, I want to go and do something else. Craft, you know, that person wanted to go and do something else. And so we have new owners. Pure by Jen, our retirement. Thai Bistro wanted to go to Florida and take care of his ailing father and open up a food truck. Yen Chin retired. Imogene's, same thing. I am not aware in all my time here at Wildwood and even under Julian, when Julian was here, I'm not aware of any business that has come to the city of Wildwood or come to us and said, I'm leaving because I'm not getting any support. I'm leaving because there isn't enough business. COVID was a different animal, certainly. Those people that couldn't make it because, as you know, the city doesn't have any incentives. There was nothing we could do if someone wasn't going to make it. We really couldn't help. But I think it's important to know that when people come to Wildwood, businesses come to Wildwood for a particular reason and they stay here. But if they leave, if they close their business down, it's not because they don't like being in Wildwood or, you know, and they're being mistreated or we're not reaching out to them. We're doing a much better job now that we certainly have Tom on board. That's for sure. But I think it's worth noting that people aren't leaving because of bad reasons. They're leaving because they're making a change in what they want to do in their lives. And I think that's important to know.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
I'd like to concur that opinion from Mr. Cross here. I have visited, over 30 different businesses already in the city here at Wildwood, and I have heard nothing but wonderful remarks about the city and how we run business here. I really do think that, the feedback in general has been very positive, and I haven't talked to a business yet. I did, the one business that did close that I spoke to was Empire Nutrition, and they did not state that any issues with Wildwood in general. It was literally just, hey, they have 2 locations and they don't have enough money to support both. They had to choose one or the other. So, I mean, literally with every other location I spoke to and every other open business, they came here for a specific reason because, one, they either lived here and they love it, or they really do like the population that's here. They really want this demographic, and have heard no remarks that were negative against the city and how we've treated, any business. So just wanted to make sure that was hit home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we appreciate the update. That brings us next to discussion of goals for the Economic Development Committee. Now that we've had some background on where we stand in terms of our occupancy rates here, it's time to review our strategic goals and decide what we want to do going forward. So with that, I will open it up for discussions, suggestions. Councilmember Hopper.
Thank you. Yeah. I think based off of the report that we had received, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and just kind of what are some of our strategic goals, but it's actually something, Councilmember, something that you said about us being kind of a bedroom town, right? Like we don't really have people who stick around out here. There's people that work and they live out here because they want to live out here and then they drive into work. But in that report, really our occupancy rates for office space had seen the biggest decline. And I think just with taking advantage of what the pandemic has brought with COVID and remote work and this transition to smaller office spaces for a lot of organizations, I was just thinking, like, I think that's almost a really good opportunity for us at this point in time to maybe look at how do we really hone in and attract the office space, and really just those businesses that want to come in and provide an office space for employees that would be out this way, or maybe just get a smaller location. It helps not only fill in those vacancy rates, but you bring in people with office space. Well, now you need lunch places, and now you need shopping, and now you need those things. So then we become a bit of a hub of where people can work. And if your office is out here, you're going to live out here, right? So it's just a benefit, I think, that compounds to everything of really we're focusing an effort in of how do we fill in this office space to draw that in. And ideally it would be, if you had somebody who was working, lived in Ellisville, lived in Chesterfield, whatever, now they're coming here, they'll stop and have dinner here instead of driving in back home to Chesterfield. Maybe they'll grab lunch. So there just provides a lot more opportunity, I think, for growth. Because retail is going to be a slow bounce back after everything, and we're honestly just not going to be probably a strong retail draw because of you're getting weekend and evening shopping, and that's pretty much it. So being able to fill in that office space, I think really is taking a huge advantage of what we have available. And what makes Wildwood so great, like if you had the opportunity to work out here instead of having to drive downtown or to Clayton or something like that, what a better commute to come this way.
So, Councilmember Hopper, do you have any specific ideas or suggestions on what we might do to attract customers for that space?
Specific, no.
Okay.
So I really had kind of thinking about after. It was kind of what. I think it. Probably focusing a lot on the property. And what they're doing. So, now. As a talking point to say, hey, they're not. You're not bringing business out here to the middle of nowhere. You're coming out. Yeah. Things I think it's. Like having. We do have. 17,000 different places. One, we have to really. We have to get out. Work, you go walk over to see a movie, and you have everything right there. Where any place else, if you really go into office space.
Mhm. Okay, very good. Thank you for that, for those ideas. Just to sort of tag on with that, city administrator has his hand up, and I was going to ask him at the same. Oh. And I apologize for not looking over to this.
I know this is really hard to see people. I was just going to mention part of our concern and part of the reason we've had some of our retail leave is because there's no daytime traffic. And so we have got to figure out, and I think that's a great idea, of focusing more on how do we get, we've got VPs, presidents, CEOs, CIOs, all sorts of heavy duty individuals that live out here. How do we get into their face somehow? And perhaps take a look at some of the demographics. I don't know if we can find out how or where people work in the city of Wildwood. Is that possible? I don't know. I don't know if that's legally available to us or not. But if we could somehow figure that out, and then they could put up satellite offices, as you just described, for their staff so that they could be able to have a nice workspace, have walking space, be able to get out and do some things in between work hours so that they're more concentrated on the job they need to do. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we market that kind of thought process.
City administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Dodwell, that's the dilemma. I think we have an opportunity with the resident survey that we're putting together to perhaps maybe include a question about, if you don't work in the city of Wildwood or you don't work from home in the city of Wildwood, where do you work? Clayton, downtown, something like that. And that might be a way, because I'm not aware. Mr. Lee here knows way more about this stuff than I do in terms of where to mine that kind of data, but I'm not aware of that sort of thing about where people work being available. But I think we could gather that information. What I've been so excited, for this committee, this new and improved committee with the addition of Mr. Lee, that we're finally, it is my hope, it'll be my last thing that I do for the city of Wildwood as I ride off into the sunset. To truly identify what is economic development in the city of Wildwood, and for you all to come to a conclusion of what that means for the city of Wildwood. We've taken a stab at it here and there, but I'm not sure that we've ever kind of come down on what it is. But I am hopeful that we come away with 3 or 4 solid ideas of what we want to do for economic development. And if one of them is to attract a satellite office, something specific that we have this young man here that actually goes after. I really want, instead of a shotgun approach or whatever, kind of some of the stuff we've done before, I'm very, very hopeful that if someone says, we want an ice cream shop, or we've all heard, I've heard, and you all have heard from different residents, boy, I wish we had healthier choices for food. I wish we had this. I wish we had that. Okay, well, let's put that into practice then and give Tom direction and say, go find, here are the 5 different kinds of restaurants, Crushed Red that's in Kirkwood, or this, or Crazy Bowls and Wraps, or whatever the case may be, and we're going to find that out as part of the resident survey. But I'm hopeful that we really, because the shotgun approach just doesn't work. We spin our wheels, and we've done that now for a while. And I'm just hopeful that we can really narrow it down to 3 or 4 main things of what we all agree is economic development, and then go after it. That's my hope.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, a couple of things. Based on what you just said, Mr. Cross, I think we should come up with maybe 3 different areas that we think is important to grow and develop. And I know you need to move all things forward, but personally, I'd like to see us focus in on maybe one area at a time, so we don't have a scatter approach and then bring the other pieces in together. And I think the retail space, the satellite offices are great because you hear that all the time. And I'm sure there's some kind of business association where you can meet the corporate types to maybe make that happen. But one thing I keep hearing and over and over and over is there's restaurants and activities lacking for families with young children. I hear that we need a family restaurant. We need one where you can sit down. We don't need, a fast food place, but we want a family restaurant that's affordable and that's open. I mean, one of the other things, and not so much with families, but everything in Wildwood closes up at 9:00. I mean, so how are you going to build on that and bring people forward if all of our restaurants are closed at 9:00? But I think if we'd really focus on some family oriented, not just restaurants, but other activities like maybe a library or a recreation center or something where our families and especially our teens, can participate in, I think that would also it's going to bring in parents, like just from the ball games, and it maybe if Pond would say, hand out coupons or whatever to get them up here for ice cream or whatever. So if you bring the kids, you're going to bring parents, and parents are going to spend money because the kids are going to encourage that, right? So I really like your comment, but I would still like to see us, focus a little bit on the family and what family needs are.
Would you like to make a motion? Okay, all right.
You've got people
Oh.
over here with their.
Yeah, if I could, and I don't disagree with what came for that either, so I think a lot of that we're kind of that the catch-22 situation. I agree that I have a young son, so having family oriented.
Yeah, let me just jump in. Hey, I can't hear if you can get a little closer to the mic.
Sure.
Thank
Oh,
you.
It wasn't turned on, so my apologies. So I think maybe, I think there's a lot to that, but I think the issue that we run into, and you talk about like restaurants closing early and stuff, is because they just don't have the business to do it and pay the staff. I think ultimately we still have to pull that draw in, and I think a little bit of tying in some of the family, I think oriented things that we do have. I mean, we have great parks. We have a lot that's available. So I think you almost, when you're talking a bit of a talking point or marketing strategy around it, is the live and work in Wildwood, right? So let's really promote what's really great about living in Wildwood. And then almost have that as say, like, you could have this as an amenity or a perk of having your office here. What a great work perk to be able to have really good walking paths and really great parks to take your kids. And we have nice places that you can go out to eat, and we have like really focusing on what we do have. Because I think ultimately, until we have just the population and the draw for people to go eat and go do that stuff, I think we're always going to struggle to maintain any business, any restaurant, anything, because they're just not going to have the traffic and the business to keep it going. And I think trying to get a more of a hub out here and pull some of that business, occupancy is, I think
We need.
we get the people here to do it.
We need daytime traffic. Because there's nothing that goes on here, and that's why businesses or retail ends up leaving, is because they get a couple of hours a day, and that's not enough to even pay rent in some of these places. So we need to be more realistic about how do we help them through adding a customer base that will be here from the time they open until the time they close.
And with the central location of town center, you have people who are, even then during the week, a lot of people, by the time they drive in and get home, they pick their kids up, they've got to their house, they're not then turning around and going back out to go do something. So it's without having something a little bit more drawn into during the day, all those hours. So I think so many places struggle even just during the week in general, because we are just that bedroom type town.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
So I think one of the issues with retail is the type of retail that we have. I mean, is it something that our residents really would like to visit, and maybe purchase something? Again, maybe more retail that's more family friendly, because some of our boutiques, especially, we don't have enough daytime traffic. So maybe if we shift the thought a little bit, and maybe we could have less high-end boutiques and maybe something more affordable as well. But we've always found that in the past, we don't have enough daytime traffic to support, restaurants that need to be open during the day. Maybe we should look at some that's just got, like you said, a window of time that they're open.
So I'll ask a question, and I don't know, I don't have I'm sorry, what?
Oh, so you had, they both have hands up.
Oh, I am sorry. Those joining us by Zoom, I'm not sure who had their hand up first, but Councilmember Bartoni, you haven't had a chance to offer some input yet tonight, so I'll go with you first.
Larry had his up way before I did, so I'll let him
Oh,
go.
okay. All right. Sorry, Larry.
That's okay, Scott. I'll let you go this time.
All right. Thank you.
I guess my thoughts on all this is that, and a little analogy, or if that's the right word, but I think we've had some recent communication lately about a trailer that might be vacating Wildwood. And I think overall, I think people are pleased. I think they're pleased that that trailer's leaving. I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm extremely sad and disappointed, because that's a bad direction for the city. And I know we're not going to go out and attract business. Let's attract the environment let's work on the environment. And I'll point out what I think our strength is, and then let the businesses, let the market recognize the benefit. We're not going to tell somebody, say, come open up a shop here. Let's create the environment that lets them do it. And that's partly my disappointment with, the trailer leaving. That was a real plus to everybody in Wildwood, I think. So my point is if I was to look at what is the greatest strength we have in Wildwood, it's our lifestyle. And I think we should do everything possible to communicate and brag about our lifestyle create the development, continue to create good residential development, which the trailer leaving is not in the right direction. Because if the type of people we're going to attract to Wildwood is exactly the type of people that the small businesses want. So I think we should really focus on, we have an incredible lifestyle here. And I mean, I can brag about it. I love it here. So, and I think we all do, but I think we create that, and that will draw the business to us. So that's my point. I know, I'm disappointed the trailer's leaving, because that marks, as far as I'm concerned, the end of what was a wonderful opportunity for Wildwood. So, okay, thank you. Don, you're up.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Thank you, Larry and Scott. We got a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing here. You need the daytime traffic to support the businesses first, but I don't disagree necessarily with anything that anybody has said, but I'm going to kind of throw something else out that might be a little bit different than what anybody has said yet. And I think the guy who owns Botanica, I've talked to him a few different times. I think his name is Ryan. And, he has said that he would love to be open for lunch, but the business isn't there. So like to fill those offices, whether it's satellite offices or whatever, I don't know, but that's just foot traffic in the town center within that area. That might help. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we've tried. I don't know if it worked, but maybe through all of our social media, we just start trying to maybe advertise some of the office space that's available. And, with the e-newsletter that goes out, if you're looking for office space, we have some, so it's just a thought. But, the businesses that close early, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons that if you talk to a lot of retail people, most of their staff does not live in Wildwood. They live in other areas of the St. Louis area. They take public transportation, which is going to be a bus, and the buses stop running at 9 o'clock, and the person has to catch the bus. So that's just kind of something to just kind of keep in mind also. But as far as attracting businesses, we could send out a survey. And we can have 35,000 people say, somebody had mentioned Red Crush. Well, that doesn't mean that they're going to come here, because, most businesses today, especially retail, especially fast food or quick serve food, whatever you want to call it, family dining, are franchises now. And those franchises have very specific demographics and numbers they're looking for. They're looking for a certain number of cars that drive by their store a day. They're looking for a population. So the city just might not qualify for a lot of the stuff that we as a committee would like to see. So I guess the challenge for the city is to find out what are the franchises that are available, what are the business that are available that the city of Wildwood qualifies for. We don't qualify for some of these places just because we just don't have the traffic count that they're looking for. They're all about numbers. If I get 40,000 cars drive by my restaurant every day, I know I'm going to get 800 of them are going to come into my restaurant. Those are just numbers. I mean, I'm in an industry that's all about traffic count, and you need traffic count because you know that you're going to attract a certain percentage of that business. So it might be just a different way to look at it is, this is what we have to offer and what businesses would be attracted to those demographics, those, I guess, infrastructure that we offer. So just something to think about, and just also maybe advertising whether we can advertise the office space that's available.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on just a couple of things that were recently said with regards to the trailer. There are discussions going right now that will show that the moving that trailer and freeing up that land for other development is a good thing. So I don't want it to get out in the atmosphere that it's a bad thing, because there are discussions going on right now that will show that it's actually is a good thing. It's a little early to discuss details, but things are in the works. So I just want to point out that's being moved out so other things can happen. Number one. Number two, to Mr. Bartoni's point, we do have a place on our website under the economic development page that does in fact identify all the open areas, all the open storefronts, showing square footage, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if it's entirely up to date. That is one of the things that Mr. Lee will be working on, just to make sure that is in fact up to date with because we've had some businesses moving in and out. So we have that on our website. Now, what we can then do is to leverage that, as Mr. Bartoni suggested, and then put that out in some other social media and say, hey, drive them to the website where they are able to see what is available in Wildwood, for store openings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
Do we do anything like that in the St. Louis Business Journal or in any of the trade journals that indicate that we do have retail space available? I don't recall us doing that or either retail or office space available in Wildwood.
We haven't done anything outside of our website at this point.
Okay.
That costs money to do.
Yeah.
That sort
I
of
know.
thing
I know.
and so forth. But it certainly is an option if we
Mhm.
find the right venue to do that.
Yeah, I have no idea how much it costs. So maybe that's something that we could investigate and bring to our next meeting as an understanding of if we were going to advertise Wildwood outside of Wildwood, what would the costs be to do that? If you understand what I'm talking about.
I do.
Okay.
It's scary that I do, that we have this.
We've known each other a long time.
Yes, ma'am. I will say that the Eureka Leader, okay, is an up and coming newspaper, and we've had some stories that are about Wildwood in the Eureka Leader. The man who is in charge of, he may be the editor or something like that. He reached out to me literally just the other day and wanted to have another meeting. I met with him a few months ago. And what he was trying to do was just push advertising pages and so forth. And at that point, it was not something I was interested in having a discussion about. He reached back out, and they're changing the paper in terms of print media, digital media, et cetera, something that goes right up this gentleman's alley right here. So I emailed the gentleman and I copied Tom and asked him to reach out to Tom. What Tom can do is sit down and talk about what it might, hey, if we want to put a quarter page ad, every few months or every quarter or something like that, a possibility. So you might want to take a note there.
Yeah.
So, we can find out what it costs. And, I can tell you that because we advertise for our open positions and so forth in some of the trade things, and it gets pretty expensive, like West News Magazine, pretty expensive, but
Yeah.
something to look into anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on our budget cycle, so I just thought we might want to think about that too.
Councilmember Hopper.
If I could kind of piggyback on that, whether it's appropriate that we have some sort of a motion, but I think it would be great to start to put together what a plan might look like as far as outside marketing. I'm thinking maybe a little even broader scale past Eureka, right? Like if we're going to draw that out this way, we're going to have to get past what's already here. And it's going to be more of, we need to attract businesses in Clayton and Midtown. Like those are the places we want to get people to pull out this direction. And so we're looking at avenues of, at that point, you're looking at types of marketing that are going to be more probably digitally focused, even of LinkedIn, those types of things where we're promoting what we have out here. It's a marketing strategy. Like it's developing a whole thing of like, what's our message going to be? How are we promoting Wildwood as a community, as a place to do business? It's a grander scale, I think, type of thing than a half-page ad. Not that I'm saying, don't take offense that I'm, putting down your idea or anything, but I think in my mind, I think we have to develop some sort of a marketing strategy from a grander scale and a larger perspective of what promotes Wildwood, what's great about us. You know, and not that it's the right thing, but like I said, for like it's a live and work in Wildwood messaging, or it's a whatever it is. This is why you come here. This is why you have your business and your family here. This is what what would draw a company to want to have their office and transition from a Clayton, a midtown, a downtown, and say, no, let's downsize. Let's, spread some of our office space out to here because it's economical. We know we have people who live in Ellisville and Baldwin, and this is a great opportunity to get office space. It's not in that clustered, congested Clarkson and Manchester, or, you're fighting to get out and you're sitting on Manchester forever. Like, hey, you could be here. If you don't live out here, it's a super quick jaunt right up and get on 40, and you can head back east if you need to, or right down to 44 and head back east. Like, I think there's just a lot of that could go in around that. But it's a overall strategy that we would have to kind of piece together of what does that messaging look like? What makes us attractive? I don't know. Again, I don't know if we need a motion to say, let's go start researching this, whatever it is, but I think there's a lot that would need to go into that. Sorry.
You can call me Thomas or Tom, whatever you prefer.
Okay. He's had his hand up.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I saw him put his hand up after Councilmember Hopper, so he was going to be next.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to elaborate. I really do like what Councilman Hopper just said when he mentioned that it would be a little bit more in scope. And I just wanted to kind of dive into a couple of the details of how an operation like this would work out. Firstly, I wanted to answer a question that was brought up previously about, can we find CEOs, CIOs, the high level executives that are outside of the, they live in Wildwood, but they work outside of here. Yes, we can. So we can go into LinkedIn and I could do, custom searches to find people that, work at certain locations. We wouldn't really want to focus, I assume, on, this is all obviously up to everyone else as well, but on large, big chains, but more so those, nitty gritty 15 to 20 people businesses that, have a location in Clayton, have a location over in Kirkwood, something like that, and potentially get them out here. I think that would be a clear cut, great thing to do. And you can find those people easily on LinkedIn as long as you put the proper criteria in the search. And then I also could, I think there could be a two-pronged approach here. I think that, my job is to, obviously, be a liaison between the city and our business community. But if we're trying to attract different individuals and we really want, we really see someone that could fit the mold of what we're looking for, I'd be more than happy to go reach out to them in person as well and discuss with them, hey, you live here, and just kind of reiterate the things that we could potentially put together in a marketing campaign. And on top of that piece, this is in the marketing campaign, that's where it gets, the door gets blown open, and there's a lot of fun stuff we can do because the targeting available when you do these kind of marketing campaigns, I mean, it gets down to the granularity of, being able to say, okay, we want somebody that's we can choose by certain specific staff. We can choose by how many people are employed at this location. We can see, exactly how many CFOs or whatever, how many people actually live in Wildwood. And how you do it is you actually can go through LinkedIn, you could do Facebook, you could do just your digital programmatic ads itself. And the programmatic really does, open the door wide open. I'm thinking LinkedIn and programmatic would be really good because what we could do is we would have to develop a good message like Councilman Hopper mentioned, but then having them, when they click on an ad, either go to our LinkedIn page if it's on LinkedIn, or go to our site selection page immediately. So they are immediately confronted with, hey, here's what's open, and and what I can do on my end is go in that backside and fix that up a bit. But I would love, if, and obviously, it's not the time to dig into the weeds on, exactly how granular the data can get, but I would love to show you all exactly what we could do, because if we would really want to, when we're looking over the budget for 2023, we'd want to maybe do a marketing program to target office owner people that live in Wildwood that also have offices in different places. It's a very achievable goal, and I could definitely, there's a potential that I could do it in-house too, which could save us a ton of money. Thank you.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, when this committee actually started, it came in from the task force, we were talking about slogans. And one of what you just said a few minutes ago kind of made it click in my head. One of them was live, work, and play. So that kind of pulls in everything you were just talking about too, and the live and work is what made that trigger from the back of my head somewhere.
Any further discussion?
One more.
Councilmember Dodd.
What do you need members of this committee to do? I think that's what you need to be thinking about, because you've got people that have some marketing background that are sitting around this table. You've got people that are eager to move this forward. So as you're developing your plan, can I do the back end stuff on LinkedIn? No. Haven't gotten that down deep into it because I haven't had to. But be thinking about that as well as to what members of this committee. Do you need some type of community outreach with residents within our own ward? When we have our ward meetings, are there specific questions that you would like to have asked? And we don't need to know those right this minute, obviously, but we'll be getting into ward meetings over the next several months. Again, some have just finished theirs up and others will just be starting theirs up. So if there's information that you need to have us gather, if there are tasks that you need us to do, then please let us know how we can help on that process. No, I'm not going to read your emails for you and outline your day. But if there's community relations that need to occur, then coach us on what we need to be doing too.
Thank you so much. I'll take that under advisement for sure. And yeah, I'll start formulating some questions that could potentially be useful there. Because I think that, that I really do appreciate, you guys providing the resources in that department to, really do get that outreach. Because I think that's one of the most important things too. I mean, obviously there's, here or there, the dog wagging the tail and the tail wagging the dog. But I think hearing, in October when we get these resident surveys out, at least getting a ground understanding of what our residents really truly want. And I think this kind of jumps into the next discussion. So sorry for skipping over, but I think that's going to be a really important piece here. And once we have that, I mean, obviously I do agree that I think that office is one of the most, Councilman Hopper made it clear, and it's very correct that it's going to take retail a second to, bounce back. And I don't necessarily think Wildwood's going to be their first choice, but the office space, we've consistently shown strong numbers, except back 2016, we were in a little bit of a rougher spot. But since 2016, and we had another economic development manager, and with the city staff that we've been having, it's just gone up and up. And even though it's not as high as it usually is, it's actually right on par with the rest of the neighboring municipalities, given all the variables we discussed. So I am very, very supportive of the idea of going after these offices. Thank you.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to reiterate that I think that the most important thing for now, this committee, is to absolutely articulate what the goals are of this committee so that we can give direction to Tom. Again, 3 or 4 concrete, specific goals of what we want to do for the city of Wildwood. I mean, and put it in writing. It's part of the economic development plan. What are those goals? Right now, they're just too esoteric. They're not specific. And I'd really like to recommend that we really focus on that initially.
Councilmember Dodwell.
You hate me on this committee, I know, because I keep thinking about things when I'm not here. But I've already written down, number 1, add professional business for daytime traffic. Number 2, increase family activities to Wildwood to garner daytime activities and evening activities, as was discussed. And then 3, promote our lifestyle that we have out here that other cities do not have as a selling point to businesses. so that they can garner and retain the employment, the employees that they need to be a successful business.
So those are the exact three things that I was going to mention. Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself.
We didn't talk to each other before this, I
No,
promise.
no, but summing up the various comments and discussions that we've had, starting with Councilmember Hopper's suggestion that we need to fill up some of our available office space. Councilmember McCutcheon talking about the need for more family-friendly activities and restaurants here within the city. And then several discussions we've had and suggestions coming from Councilmember Brost regarding promoting our lifestyle. Councilmember Bartoni regarding promoting our office space. That ties in together. So those would be the three things that I would agree with Councilmember Dodwell that we should focus on going forward as a strategy for filling up office space, a strategy for going after more family-friendly activities here within the city, whether they're restaurants or something else, and then also a marketing strategy for promoting our lifestyle and promoting what Wildwood has to offer so that we can fill up that office space. Now, how specific do you need for us to be, city administrator?
Mr. Chair, what I'd like, I'm going to ask Tom to summarize what was discussed here and put that into three, send it out to the committee and have you all edit it. We have no pride of authorship in our department.
Okay.
If we've missed something, but let's get it on paper and then we all know that's our map. So he'll be sending that out.
Councilmember Hopper.
So if I can piggyback on that, so if we could do that and then.
Next meeting.
So as soon as possible, get it out, we can make. Be good, we'll agree on these being the next three. I like what you're saying too of everything that we have. Take a look at just the continued designate for town center of the city. Like, okay, well, we have to. With it. You can't do anything else because we don't have anything. So, but I think bringing them down to ground level or here's our next 2 to 3 years. So, these are great. I go to committee long term. I always make a suggestion, get it down, put it in my meeting.
Finalize it.
Thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
Have we seen, since I'm not on admin public works or parks and planning, have we seen anything from the survey that admin and public works was working on? Do we have a list of the questions that have already been generated, or are they not to that point yet? Just curious.
City administrator had his hand up, so he may be able to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That resident survey is in process. In fact, we'll be meeting with Chair Garitano here in the next day or two. I think we actually have a meeting tomorrow or Thursday. I can't remember. So we've been soliciting input from the various committees and other folks. So I suspect that at the September 4th or 5th, that's the day at 6th. I think maybe 6th. It's the day after. It's the Tuesday after Labor Day. We'll be discussing probably and solidifying those questions because we actually have a placeholder that we put in the Gazette. The Gazette will be going out in the mail between September 8th and September the 14th. And there is and it says, look for in October. So we're getting pretty close. So the questions that we generate in this committee, the same thing is happening in the other committees, and we'll be pulling that together in September.
So do we need to generate questions, or have we already? I know I sent a bunch to Joe back in.
Yeah.
That's actually
April.
the next agenda item.
I was gonna say,
It's on the net. It's the
Yeah.
it's
No, that's all right. Councilmember Hopper.
that was, I was just gonna.
Okay.
point out, like, I think you're ahead of us.
All right.
Getting there to the.
All right.
So,
Thank you. So
Councilmember Dodwell is right on point.
super. So thank you all for the discussion. I think we have our 3 points to be summarized then, and they'll be sent out to us to review, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we will move on to a discussion of potential resident survey questions. And I think there was an attachment on that, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. And I'm just wondering, that survey that is sent out, somebody had suggested putting a question in there, if you do not work in Wildwood, where do you work? Just to gather some information. But I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to put a question in there if you work, and I'm not sure I've got the phrasing down right, but if you're working in another city, are you familiar with the advantages of locating your business within Wildwood? Something like that to generate some interest. And I don't know if there would be a way, if somebody responds, no, they're not familiar, for us to then get in contact with that person.
I think the best way we get that, not that it's not a question, but they would be fair. Sure, but no, I have no idea what would be going to be when having it some while. Do we need to circle back to the marketing conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Apparently, we need to communicate a little better about what's good about Wildwood.
right. Councilmember McCutcheon.
I think it's a good question, but went back to what Mr. Lee was saying earlier about how he can mine the data of who works here and lives here and vice versa. So I don't know if that might be a better approach than putting it on the survey.
I think that is a better approach.
Yeah, I would agree with that approach, just because, I mean, I think that, we don't know we don't know who's actually going to respond to the survey. Obviously, we hope for the best. But, a lot of the cases could be, are they going to be the people that have the decision makers that are able to, potentially open those satellite offices? So, I mean, I think it could, it won't, I don't think it would hurt to have both potentially, but I definitely think the data mining is going to be crucial in identifying those individuals, which, we consider them decision makers because they're able to, make those choices like relocation. And obviously they would have to have the geotag of being a resident of Wildwood as well. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
On the potential survey questions, I just had a couple of additions. Under your first question, which of the following business types? I think we need to have professional, I don't know how do you describe office workers? I mean, people that run finance organizations or sales groups, or if you know that. Professional services. Okay. Yeah, I think that needs to go in there too.
Okay.
Yeah. Example, legal CPA. Thank you.
And our intention was there to try to prioritize, get the residents to prioritize what they're looking for, because if you ask them if they want a particular type of business here, they will probably all say yes to everyone. So which ones would they put the priority on?
No, I like the ranking. Yeah, I think that was my insight into that first question too. Got big with I kind of like almost, I think the first question and the last question are really almost the same. It's just having them, but I think having everything.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Brost.
Yeah, I think one question and I think this really hinders parts of Wildwood for economic development, but to somehow tie in a question, and I don't know if it's possible that if we could follow up with the person who provides comment or not, but that is that the impact of our investment in internet, would that facilitate expansion or consideration of Wildwood as your place for your business? whether that's a home business. You know, because again, for myself, when I operated my business, if my office was located somewhere in Wildwood, I still needed good internet at home. So somehow I think a question tied to our commitment to internet, is that something you would consider in expanding a business presence in Wildwood? And I know the answer is absolutely yes, because I've talked to so many people. So I think we need to look at that. And I'll back up just slightly. It's not a question, but maybe it's a question if it's truly an economic development questionnaire, but it's not. I think a big issue we're going to have is for businesses coming in is going to be transportation. And that's why I think we have to leverage our lifestyle. I mean, I get my hair cut in Wildwood and everybody drives 45 minutes to get there. I mean, we are not in a good location to bring in people from around the metro area. And I think we have to keep that in mind. So, but I think we have to figure out a question, and for Mr. Lee, maybe it's a way he can word it, but also in the way that maybe there's some data that can be obtained there in almost a prospect list. Let's make sure that with this internet that's going on, that we facilitate residents that are looking to potentially expand a business presence in Wildwood. And again, that may be primarily in their home, but there are a lot of professionals that work out of their home. And I hear from them regularly, believe me, as many of us do. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bartoni, and then Councilmember Lee. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Scott. On the potential questions, my only comment and I guess / suggestion would be on the last question that references big box stores. You know, for those of us that have been around for a while, Katie's been around for even longer than I have. She will remember. I mean, there's been people that have been voted out of office for their support of big box stores. There have been people voted in for their opposition to big box. So I would be careful about putting something on the questionnaire that you're not prepared to do. You know, it's like asking a kid, and this is a bad analogy, but you know, if you ask a kid, you want to go to the zoo, you want to go to Six Flags, or you want to go to Disney World? Well, you better be prepared to take them to Disney World. You know, so the city has never had that appetite for big box stores. So I would just, you know, my recommendation would be not to even include it on there.
Good suggestion. Mr. Lee.
Go ahead.
Are you
I was just
Councilmember
going to tie on to what he said. Maybe that's an opportunity for the professional services, is maybe eliminate big box and add in professional services as an option on that. To I agree with what he's saying. Wildwood is part of the appeal of Wildwood, would definitely be tarnished if we all of a sudden had a Best Buy down center. It would go a lot of people off, but we're talking about doing professional services anyway.
I think that was great input from Councilmember Bartoni, and I would agree with Councilmember Hopper's suggestion.
Yeah, no, I really do appreciate that too. That makes sense. And I think professional services really does, does replace it really well. I did just want to ask for feedback on the community centers piece. And also I have a couple other questions too that I was festering today, but I will send those over to you whenever I've kind of completed a full list. I want to make sure I have them all together because I just had a couple pop in my head today. But I wanted to also discuss the potential, and this obviously wouldn't be a first, and it's kind of off topic from the resident survey, but currently we have, and this was built out, I don't know necessarily when it was built out, but there was a standardized questionnaire, and this is part of the economic development guide that was created, that whenever you conduct a business visitation, hopefully if the participant is willing, that you're able to fill this out. And it asks questions like, how are the public services? How do you rate our police? Are you looking to expand, grow? I was wondering if we would maybe want to take another look at that, to take a peek on the next agenda for the next meeting and potentially add some questions, remove some questions, prioritize, because I've noticed, I've used it, I've kind of used it sparingly, on and off to kind of see how the business owner or the general manager, whoever it might be, kind of responds to it. Cause sometimes it can be monogamous, just kind of going through one after one after one. And it's sometimes you get more information from having a real genuine conversation. But if we could maybe, what my recommendation would be to shorten it and then really just focus in on the business aspect of it. But I would love to potentially, and it's not something we would put on the website either. It'd be something that I would keep in my handy dandy bag of tricks whenever I come to do my business visitation, so we can have some kind of standardized score, if you will. Because after I collect all these, say, I do all my meetings within that year, after that year, I can compile all of that data and then give you guys a really good report on what the actual feel for these, what the questions we develop, what the feel of the business community is. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to take a look at the economic development guide, the questions that are in there, and make some suggestions and then send them out to us for review?
I would love to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
Another question. Have you talked or do you engage with other economic development managers from other cities? And specifically, I'm wondering if you've talked to the city of Clayton. As old as I am, I've kind of watched it move from a lot like Wildwood was back when I was a kid. It really was. It was kind of the edge of downtown St. Louis. And then boom, 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 boom. They decided to put up all sorts of office buildings, et cetera. And they still have all the home fronts, et cetera. I just didn't know if there would be any benefit in speaking or looking at the history of how that grew. I don't know that we want to grow quite that extensively in the business community, but I was just curious as how other cities in the area who have been very successful, such as Clayton, how'd they do it?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I have through, the chamber and just through general contact, because at first when I was looking to do the research on the occupancy rates, I was reaching out to individual cities, the neighboring municipalities that we had. And I did find that a lot of them didn't have somebody in the position for economic development. Sometimes it was really the person that would handle this thing would be the city administrator. And, they have so much on their plate that they're not looking at the occupancy rates that they're in their municipality. So at that point, I have not reached out to Clayton, which now I thank you for that idea, because I really like that. And I will be reaching out them first thing tomorrow morning. But I think that, City Administrator Cross and I actually discussed potentially meeting with the city administrator for Baldwin and just kind of getting their, understanding of, how they're running their operation. And I do think there is great value in meeting with other municipalities and other individuals in general that sit in these kind of chairs to see what's working well, especially if they are showing good statistics and they're showing an economy that is driving people to them. I think there's tons and tons of, good things that can come out of that.
All right, thank you. I believe that brings us then to City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with regards to the questions then, if I may, if you think of questions or you want to reword it or you want to change it, if you would just shoot an email to Tom, copy me with your suggestions, any other thing, and then we can summarize that, send it back out to you. But mainly I want to get it to Chair Garitano sooner rather than later so that we can start pulling together that total survey. So, but if you all have suggestions or anything, if you would just put it in writing and send it to us, if that's all right.
Thank you. So I believe that brings us then to items under not ready for action, one of which I'm going to take them in a different order here. Update to the economic development guide. I think that ties in with what we were talking about before regarding the survey. So possibly, Thomas, you want to take a look at that overall economic development guide, the questions in there, and then send some suggestions out to us for discussion at the next meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually noted that, and I'll definitely there. And I did want to make a distinction here because there are two different pieces here. So there's a difference between I would say the office and the business visitation survey, which is generally just it's a little bit more lax. But then for the economic development guide, they had developed questions, and I guess we can discuss both of these because I think there is definitely some things we can add, we could remove, and just simplify. There is also one that is for stakeholder interviews, and that means there's a certain criteria that was developed whenever we decided upon. I believe it was in 2021 before Julian had departed, that we had looked over and said, okay, you had to qualify, you had to be a really big, big stakeholder within this community to be part of that interview set to go into consideration for the revision of the economic development guide versus the survey question that would go to each and every business, either having one employee or 15 or 1,000, whatever it might be. I think there are two different ones that are out there right now. And I think that reviewing both of them, and I can do that, review both and provide my notes and my suggestions. I think that would be very beneficial and a great topic for the next agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Potential city to business newsletter. That's not ready for action tonight, but Mr. Lee, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, no.
Time?
I personally think that, I have been talking with businesses small and big throughout the time I've been here. And I have always, kind of tested the waters with how receptive they would be to that kind of idea. And a lot of them haven't been getting they just haven't signed up to our weekly newsletter that we already have. And I told them, here's where you could do it. And I gave them the information. But I have gotten a little bit of, not as much interest as you would expect. I was hoping for more because I think it would be personally, I think it would be a great idea because it would provide, updates within city council, what happened there, what could affect potentially businesses within our community, and then also what happened in the economic development committee that could potentially affect businesses. And then on top of that, we'd be able to provide those same things we're providing during our updates on business changes and, different business news. So other businesses could know about openings, closings, ribbon cuttings, all those things. I think it could be a really cool tool. But, I have seen just people that, business owners that just did not show that level of interest and enthusiasm for it that I thought they would. I really did go into it thinking like, this is a great idea. So I just wanted to give you that feedback, but I am more than willing to write those. I think that it would serve some people, but I just want to know, the question would be the deliverable here. How many business owners would actually read it and then take that information to heart, especially if it's, is it actually going to give us a tangible effect if someone, sees there's a new opening here and it's a vacancy? Are they actually going to maybe act? And that's the question.
Okay. Councilmember Dodwell.
We had talked about potentially having a meet and greet with businesses sometime in the future. We hadn't talked about when we might host that, but just the Economic Development Committee having that kind of meet and greet. And maybe we could do that type of a conversational survey during that type of a meeting. Once we get our surveys back in-house so that we know what the residents are looking for, and we might be able to share some of that data with the businesses as well at that point and see if perhaps we can garner some better understanding of what they're actually looking for, especially if Wildwood Business Association is kind of poo-hooing some businesses or for whatever reasons they are. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea, guys.
All right, thank you. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, going back to something that you said earlier, it kind of sparked a thought. Maybe if the city host, or you as the economic development special host, a regional event for other economic development managers And maybe have it as maybe, I don't know, a quarterly event or something. That would give you time to speak with them one-on-one and then with you. And then I think always developing a partnership is very helpful. Even if your goals may be a little bit different or maybe appear to be competitive, but by meeting face to face, you can turn that around and show how it is a partnership and how it is useful and not competitive.
Yeah, I personally really like that. I think it's a great idea. And I also just wanted to second Councilman Dodwell over there with the idea that I was almost thinking, and this was one of my, one of the things I would like to accomplish within the first year of being here is, obviously you guys all have very busy schedules and I want to respect that, but having that, I would say almost having a forum like that, the meeting with any businesses would be invited and they'd be invited through, either myself emailing them and then also meeting them in person and then the newsletter, all that good stuff, social media. But then on top of that, doing that potentially quarterly, so we could do updates and then in between those quarters, so each month, I could potentially take over a meeting for that. So I could, so you guys don't, if you would like to, I would love to have everyone, but I know scheduling is conflictual. So I would love to have the ability to meet with them, and then be able to take their notes and the trends that I'm seeing from those meetings, especially if they start becoming like a coffee with the mayor, how it is pretty successful. If we start seeing success in that, I would love to then be able to create a report from it each time and then report it here at the EDC so we can make, informed decisions on it. And same with you. I would love to do that, hosting the other economic development managers.
Thank you. City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Dowell, in fact, you're correct. We did talk about that in some of the previous meetings about we'd like to get to that point. Bless you. That to have, something perhaps quarterly where we have businesses come in, we have a roundtable and do it on a Saturday or something, or whatever's convenient for that particular business. We even discussed, would it be, folks of a like industry, or would it be varied? And there's pros and cons to both of that. But we did certainly talk about that as one of the things that we definitely want to do is to have that roundtable, probably certainly no more frequently than quarterly. But I think that is something that we will get direct feedback from businesses, and we absolutely need to have that. Mr. Lee is young and Mr. Lee is very eager to please. So my job is to not allow him to overcommit himself, which he's kind of doing here. So I'm going to ask for the committee's indulgence here to kind of let us work through the process. He's only been here 2 months. He's a real go-getter, and that's what I like about him, and that's why I hired him. But we got to stay focused on certain things. The business newsletter. Remember, I created a position that has 2 titles to it. One is communications manager. It is my goal to consolidate the message that comes out of City Hall into one person, and that's this gentleman to my left. We have a weekly newsletter that needs to be revamped entirely, and it does not need to be weekly either. It's repetitive, and there's a lot of things that I want to change with that. And there may be a business flavor to it. I don't know yet. That's something that we need to talk about. But in terms of social media, we have, that gentleman sitting down there at the table handles all our social media stuff and does it, as good as anybody. But he has a day job. And so I really, he's good at it. He likes doing it, but I think he'd like to probably not do so much of it. So again, there's things that we need to do. I may end up hiring somebody to help in that regard. We actually pay an outside firm to do some of our social media. Okay. At a fair amount of money each month. Okay. I'm not real fond of that. I want to bring it in-house because that person doesn't really know what's going on necessarily inside. So there's things that I want to do, but it's going to take time. And so I'm just asking hopefully for your patience. The economic development guide. I've gone through it thoroughly. I've had a third party go through it thoroughly. One of the things that I had him do when he was home with COVID was to go through that and review it thoroughly, cover to cover, and give me his input. which actually ends up paralleling my thoughts. There are good parts of that document, and there's parts of that document that really aren't helping us do economic development. There's a lot of statistics in there, and there's a lot of information in there. It's good, but it was done by a consultant, and it reads like a document that was prepared by a consultant. I think when we get down and whittle it down, and I think Mr. Lee will agree, because he has said he agreed that we can redo that and let's keep the good parts, and let's kind of just do away with the busy work kind of stuff. So, but again, my reason for saying all this is just, I'm just going to ask for a little bit of patience, and I need to have him not commit so much until we can talk and prioritize some of these things. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
All righty. Thank
City Administrator, we all appreciate your guidance. Thank you. Councilmember Prost.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily for a discussion tonight, but maybe at the next meeting, could we sort of get a status as to where the WBA stands and how they might fit in with this this committee? I mean, we don't need to talk about it, but we hadn't mentioned it tonight, and I think that's an organization that hopefully is still alive. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Prost. I think the city administrator has some input on that subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's actually two different organizations. There's the West County Chamber of Commerce, and then there's the Wildwood Business Association. They are two separate and distinct organizations. The Chamber of Commerce is the organization I was referring to earlier when we were speaking about ribbon cutting ceremonies. And there's a president, there's an organization with that. The WBA is a different matter altogether. That is headed up by Jenny Goski, and Jenny is the president of the WBA. The WBA is struggling right now to find out what it wants to do. We had actually had a meeting with Jenny last week with regards to the tree lighting ceremony, okay, and so forth. So it's a volunteer organization, and it's tough getting help. They don't have money, and so we include them when we can, and we try to partner with them when we can. But right now, the WBA is just trying to figure out what it wants to do when it grows up. So we'll continue working with them, but and we have some partnerships. Like I say, they're certainly involved in that. But other events throughout the year, not so much. So, but it can be improved. We're working on it.
Any other discussion, comments? Mr. Lee?
I just wanted to add with the WBA that, with just looking back on all the files, and I've done, extensive research on everything that Julian was doing up to the point where he departed. And then after that, kind of just keep filling in the gaps. It does seem that, based off the information I've reviewed, that after COVID hit, the WBA had the highest membership rate that it ever had, 2019 going into 2020. March hit 2020, and it kind of plummeted. It really did. And it wasn't able to, get back to that same footing. And I think that, myself being in this position, I have met with Jenny, but I need to meet with her more often so I can really get a better read of where they're currently at. Because I think at the end of the day, I think they could be a really integral part of, what the city can do with our business community. I think it's a great place to, really bring everyone together. But every single business I've talked to that might not be the biggest, they have no idea what the WBA is. I mean, it's just the honest truth. I've done a lot of business visitations, and some of them have said that, hey, does that organization still exist? So it's definitely needs, and, there's just certain things that, updating the website and things like that. It's just, there's a lot of administrative work with that organization that I think needs to be revamped. And hopefully with myself being in this position, I can provide some assistance where I can, but obviously it's its own organization. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Hopper. Second by Councilmember McCutcheon. Non-debatable. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstain. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight. We appreciate it. A lot of good discussion. I think we accomplished our objective, which was to come out of here with a couple of points to focus on.